In this session, we'll see about the store's manual and security of the stores. Store's manual is a written statement of policies and procedures. A manual has many advantages, giving about the responsibilities of the storekeeper, standardization of the store's activities, and giving new ideas and suggestions for improving and streamlining the storage operations. So, store's manual is said to be a complete record of all the store's operations in an organization. Now we shall see how to measure the store's efficiency. Like the other production departments, the stores should also be evaluated regarding the performance. Store is the repository of inventory. Sometimes it may lead to the crores and crores of rupees in case of large size organizations. How well the stores are managed, how well the items are handled should be the measuring performance of any storekeeper. The storekeeper's performance can be measured objectively through quantitative techniques. Sometimes it may also lead to the qualitative aspects through the other methods wherein the measurement is said to be subjective. We shall see certain indices which will measure it in quantifiable terms. Store's efficiency index. Number of requisitions delivered on time divided by total number of requisitions. So, how many requisitions they have received during a particular period and how many requisitions have been delivered on time. So, that shows their efficiency. Then, store's loss index. The value of inventory or the stores lost due to deterioration, obsolescence and pilferage divided by average loss of the inventory. Average value of the inventory. So, this loss to the average value will give the storage loss. This index must be kept as minimum as possible. Then obsolescence index. Value of non-moving items divided by the total inventory value. So, the non-moving items should be identified and find out what is the proportion of the non-moving items to the total inventory value. And once again, this index should also be kept as minimum as possible. Then the space utilization index. How efficiently the storage space has been utilized or used. So, area used for storage divided by total area available for storage. So, this shows about the utilization of the space. So, the performance of a storekeeper can be measured with the store's efficiency, the efficiency in which the requisitions are met on time, then the loss index, obsolescence index and the space utilization index. Sometimes the qualitative assessment may also be measured in case of housekeeping, in case of record maintenance, handling of the items, and then how to reduce the non-moving items, how to manage the stock out situations, etc. So, subjective assessments may also be made. Now, we shall pass on to the security measures of the stores. Security of the stores includes the measures against the closure of the stores daily and keeping custody of the keys kept by the outsiders, then pilferage by the employees, malpractices by the staff of the stores department, then precautions against the fire protection and the pest control measures. Adequate precautionary measures against these must be worked out in advance and should be properly implemented. Such measures include a daily closing of stores and custody of keys, marking of stores, storage of expensive and scarce materials, movement control of incoming and outgoing vehicles, obtaining indemnity bonds or getting a bank security from stores, then holding inquiry in initiating the disciplinary action against the defaulters, maintaining the firefighting equipments, adopting the pest control measures, etc. Now we shall see each one in detail. First one is the closure of the stores daily and custody of the keys. Closure of the stores every day should be properly supervised by the storekeeper. Store keys must be properly numbered and registered. Written instructions should be issued nominating the persons responsible for the keys. During the off-duty hours, keys should be kept under lock and key under the supervision of a responsible person, and he may be a ward. And he has to make an entry in the key movement register maintained by the storekeeper. Anyone who is collecting the key and depositing the key, especially after the factory hours or the working hours, should ask to sign the register. So he has to sign the register, key movement register. All the duplicate keys must be kept under the custody of a senior officer. Any loss or misplacement of the key on any occasion must be thoroughly investigated by him. Then in case of old locks, that should be replaced periodically. See, the closure of the stores and the placing of keys must be closely supervised by the storekeeper, and the responsibility must be fixed with the persons having in charge of the various keys. Then the theft by the outsiders. To eliminate the theft by the outsiders, the entire factory should have a compound wall or high barbed wire fencing. The number of windows, the glass shutters and the open ventilators should be kept as minimum as possible. All the windows should be capable of being securely fastened. They must also be fitted with the bars and iron mesh. Security guards should be put on duty at strategic points, at very important points. There should be security people. Outsiders should not be permitted strictly to enter into the stores beyond serving counters. So they should not cross the serving counters. During the after office hours, a guard should be put on duty to look after the store's building, or alternatively he has to visit the place at short intervals by patrolling security guard. So proper patrolling should be there, heavy lighting should be there, and proper fencing should be there to avoid the theft by the outsiders. Expensive items and the scarce items should be kept in the locked almirahs, and these stores should be insured also against this burglary. Next is pilferage of employees. Pilferage refers to the gradual removal of material in small quantities by the employees of the company. The employees may take the stores in small quantities and they may take it outside, or they may get it for their own use, or they can sell it for an amount. So the following precautions should be taken to check the pilferage by the employees. Only the authorized personnel, the person who is authorized to enter into the stores, must be allowed to enter into the store. And no personal property should be allowed to enter into the stores. He should not carry a bag, or he must not carry a container. No personal property should be allowed inside the stores. Items liable for pilferage should be monogrammed with the company's name or marked with the specific identification details before taking them into the store. So with going to have a company's name monogrammed in the items, then the employees cannot take it and use it for their own personal purpose, as the name is there. And once again, the item should be having a special identification mark so that it can be easily identified when it is taken out by the employees. Now, we have to see to it, in case of heavy items, the monograms or the identification mark need not be made. Only in case of lightweight items which can be easily carried must be monogrammed. Then the items of domestic use like the clothing, towels, soaps, hand tools, small lamps should be properly marked. Measuring instruments need to be marked. Office stationeries should be marked. And again, fresh materials must be used against the return of the older ones. Surprise checks should be made by the storekeeper in all sections of the stores frequently. Then the store staff should be physically searched before they are allowed to leave the main gate after a day's work. And this can be done only if there is any suspicion on the store staff. Suppose if it is continuously done, it may have a mental pressure on the store's staff. So whenever we have a suspicion, they can be physically checked. Immediate enquiry can be conducted if any malpractice is brought into the attention. Prompt disciplinary action should be taken against the defaulters, that is the employees who are making this pilfering activity. The punishment for the pilferage should be given with adequate publicity. So prior information must be given to the workers regarding the punishments if the pilferage is found. Then malpractice by the store staff itself. Malpractice is said to be the manipulation of the accounts by the store's personnel with the help of the outsiders. The storekeeper may conduct certain malpractices in receiving the goods and storing the goods. So we have to see what are all the measures or what are all the steps that has to be taken by the management or the organization top personnel in checking the malpractice of the store staff itself. The outgoing trucks, the trolleys or the parcels must be thoroughly checked, and the gate pass must be issued to the persons who are taking the material out of the company's premises. Then indemnity bonds or the bank security must be taken from the store's employees. Then the prevention of fire. Fire is an accident caused by chemical reaction between the combustible materials and the oxygen. Possible causes of fire are careless handling improper storage and disposal of inflammable materials, open electrical circuits causing short circuits, smoking by the own staff or by the clients in the store, etc. So the fire may be occurring within the stores, which may destroy the entire stores. For this purpose, the precautions should be taken as follows. First one is, the doors and the staircases should be made up of fire-resistant materials. Smoking should be strictly prohibited in and around the stores, either by the own staff or by the clients. Adequate earthing should be made to internal and external wiring of the store buildings. Materials must be properly stored. Leakage of the inflammable oil, grease and fluids should be prevented. Combustible materials should be stored in a covered metal bins, and if they are in large quantities, they must be stored in small lots in more than one location with the sufficient gaps in between to limit the spread of the fire. Defective wiring should be immediately replaced to eliminate the possibility of fire due to the short circuits. Since the inflammable materials can undergo spontaneous ignition on account of slow oxidization coupled with the inadequate ventilation to remove the resulting heat, they should be properly stored. Those parts of the buildings where inflammable materials are kept should be well insulated to reduce the risk of fire spread. The exits should be provided with the panic bolts and should open outwards. So the exit doors must be opened outwards. Telephone should be provided at strategic locations with the ready access to the telephone numbers of the fire brigade. Material inside the stores should be stocked suitably, keeping fire hazard in mind. Enough clearance between the wall and the storage rack should be provided. A minimum meter of aisle space should be maintained between the storage of racks. A meter clearance is recommended between the stacked items and tube light fittings. Appropriate firefighting equipments, namely the fire extinguishers, water buckets, water sprinklers, etc., should be provided at appropriate places. Fire extinguishers should be located as near as possible to exits or staff landing. Fire extinguishers should be visible and easily accessible also. A plan showing the location of the firefighting equipment and other useful information should be displayed at the appropriate places. Firefighting equipment should be checked periodically and must be kept for use during any eventuality. Smoke detectors should be installed in the storehouses to provide an early warning. Fire alarms should be provided at appropriate places to sound emergency communication to all. Store buildings, stocks, machinery and other assets should be covered by the fire insurance. So, the prevention of fire should be made with the above precautions. The next is the menace of rodents and termites. If menace of rodents is observed, the stores should be fumigated and rat poison traps should be kept. For termites, white ants and fungi, suitable pesticides and fungicides should be sprayed. So this tells about the security of the stores. So the security of the stores includes closure of the stores and custody of the keys with the storekeeper. and the theft by the outsiders, pilferage of the employees, malpractice by the store staff, prevention of fire, and the menace of rodents and termites. We shall now see about the organization of stores management. In small organizations, the storekeeper is a subordinate to the production manager, as storing is said to be a service function of the production department. Under such organizations, purchasing is also within the production department. Hence, the stores does not come on the first ladder of the line executors. Where purchasing department is a major line department, the storekeeper is associated with the purchase department and is subordinated to purchasing agent or director of purchases. Where materials manager holds the responsibility of all material operations, the stores is kept subordinate to materials manager. Hence, the place of stores in a company's organizational chart is subordinate and is rarely independent. Where there is only one production unit or where most of the production units are situated in the same building, one central store is organized for all the production departments. But where the manufacturing units are at different places, it is usually convenient to have separate stores for the separate production units. Sometimes, a central store is maintained for major and common materials to be used by various operating units, and small individual stores are attached with each operating units for items specially required by all the particular unit. The objective behind the degree of centralization and decentralization is said to be of effective control and convenience and the reduction of cost of storing, inspection, accounting and handling. So when we have one production unit, we can have a centralized stores, or when we have more than one production unit, we can have the stores attached to each particular production units as decentralized. The internal organization of the stores depends upon the size, nature of the store's materials, storing problems relating to the inspection, material handling, accounting and salvaging. However, the internal organization of a manufacturing company can have the following divisions, namely receiving section, storing section, issuing section, accounting section, and then the evaluating the inventory. Now we shall see each of the sections, namely receiving, storing, issuing, accounting and evaluating. Receiving section. This section performs the following function, namely the receiving of the incoming materials, checking and inspecting the quality of the incoming materials, preparing the goods inward note, notifying the indenters of the special requisitions regarding the arrival of the materials, informing the purchasing section regarding the excess supply or the shortages or the defectives if any, and delivering the materials to the appropriate stores. The receiving section may be completely centralized, or it may be semi-centralized, or it may be fully decentralized. In a completely centralized receiving section, all the materials are received, checked and inspected in one particular office, and the goods are delivered to the various stores along with the goods inward notes. In semi-centralized receiving section, the records are completely centralized and the light goods are received in the receiving section. The heavy materials are received and checked at the respective stores by receiving section staff. The main objective is to save unnecessary material handling from the receiving section. Each store has its own receiving section and goods invert notes are prepared separately by each receiving section. The receiving section should be separate from the actual stores and the dispatch section to avoid any mixing up of incoming materials with the stores and the outgoing materials. This will also deny the access to the outsiders to the various stores and facilitate the inspection and checking of materials. The receiving section should be located nearest to the place where the incoming goods are unloaded from the carriers. Only then it will be easier for unloading. The size of the receiving section depends upon the volume of receipts and the nature of materials, but it should be spacious enough so that the materials can be properly unloaded, unpacked and inspected. There should be sufficient counters for receiving, unpacking and inspecting the such materials. The number of personnel or the staff also depends upon the volume of the work. The usual procedure in receiving section is that as soon as the goods are received, it is measured, unpacked if it is necessary and entered into daily goods receipt register, and this register is maintained in the stores. Daily goods receipt register. If the goods have been received from the local suppliers, usually a receipt is immediately issued to the person giving the delivery after recording it in the daily goods receipt register with the qualifying remark, receipt unchecked, subject to inspection and rejection. So only after receiving the goods, the quality and the quantity will be inspected, and if it is not up to the expectation or up to the mark, it will be rejected. That's why the word is included as unchecked, subject to inspection and rejection. So those items are received but unchecked, and it is subject to the inspection and the rejection. That means the work of rejection and is pending. The work of inspection and rejection is pending. Normally a rubber stamp is used and they have to put the rubber stamp on the note. Then the goods are sent for checking and inspection. First the quantity is measured and then compared with the quantity recorded in the challan or the invoice given by the vendor, and also with the purchase order, and find out the excess or the shortages. Then the quality is inspected either by the receiving department inspectors, or if detailed inspection is necessary, the inspectors from the user departments, that is the production department, may also be asked to inspect. So if necessary, the production department officials can come and inspect the quality. So the quality can be checked by way of sampling method, or you can go in for the 100% inspection. In case of sampling methods, samples are drawn from the lots and the quality is checked. If the 100% inspection is made, each and every item is inspected. So if necessary, 100% inspection will also be made by the inspecting authority. If required, the materials will also be sent to the laboratory or specially designed quality inspection department. So if the items needs a special attention regarding the quality, then it will be sent to the labs also or to the quality control department. When the quantity and the quality of the materials are being checked and inspected and the goods are accepted by the storekeeper, then goods receipt note or a goods inward note is prepared by him with all the details of information, namely the date of the receipt, the date of the goods inward note, the name of the vendor or the consignor, the number of the invoice or the challan, the mode of transport, whether it is rail, road or any other mode of transport, then stores to which the materials are to be sent, the codification of the materials, the description, quantity ordered, what is the quantity received, accepted quantity, and what is the percentage of rejections. So all these items will be entered in the goods inward note or goods receipt note. Inspection report or rejection note number and the discrepancy report number and the signature of the checker and the signature of the inspector should also be mentioned in the goods receipt note. So suppose if the items are rejected, the person who has really checked it, inspected it, and what is the reason for the discrepancy and what is the report regarding the rejection should be mentioned in the goods inward note. This note is also prepared in duplicate. One copy will be sent to the accounts department and one copy to be sent to the purchase department. And if needed, two more copies will be prepared. One will be sent to the stores and one will be retained for the reference. And if the goods are totally rejected due to the poor quality or for any other reason, a rejection note must be prepared and a copy to be sent to the purchase section, and the rejected goods are to be stored at a different place. It should not be arranged in the bins. It must be stored in a separate place to avoid the mixing up of the rejected goods with the normal goods. In case certain discrepancies as regard packing or any minor damage or the shortages in the quantity are found, a discrepancy note should be prepared and it should be attached with the goods receipt note. If there is a major shortage of goods or major damages in the packing cases, the purchase department manager should be consulted to ascertain whether the goods are to be accepted or returned to the vendor itself. If the goods are to be accepted, the shortages and damages should be accurately estimated and the purchase department should be informed accordingly. In case of excess, a decision should be taken in consultation with the purchase department whether the excess supply has to be accepted or returned. After this, the goods are sent to the respective stores along with the copy of the goods inward note. So, when receiving, the storekeeper must be very careful to see about the rejections and also the quantity, whether it is in excess or whether any shortage of the goods is felt. In both the cases, the purchase department manager has to be consulted. In case of excess, he has to be consulted whether to retain that excess or to return it to the vendor, and in case of shortages, the discrepancy note must be prepared by the storekeeper and sent to the purchase department. Next one is the store section. There may be only one storeroom with the different sections in a small company, or there may be many stores properly classified according to the volume and nature of materials. Usually in a manufacturing organization, the stores may be classified as tool equipments and raw materials, semi-finished goods, finished goods and a general store. So the number of stores depend upon the size and the nature of the materials stored. The storeroom is responsible for the safety, care and disbursement of the materials and the supplies which are not in the process or not in the usage. It is supervised by a storekeeper under whom a number of store clerks and laborers will work. Large industries may have several storerooms located at different plants and at different places in the same plant or at a place for different commodities. In such cases, various storekeepers, each in charge of one store, supervises their respective stores and report to the general storekeeper, who mainly coordinates the activities of all the stores. Now we shall see what are all the store's activities. The activities that are generally undertaken by the stores department includes receiving the incoming stores, classifying it, identifying, storing, maintaining the accounts and issuing the materials. The procedure of the storeroom is that the clerk in charge receives the materials from the receiving section along with a copy of the goods inward note. The material is then classified according to the nature of the product. After classification, the identification marks are given on the materials on its packing so that it may be easily identified and traced whenever required. Different colors may be used or different numbers can be used or codes can be given for this purpose. The rack number may also be noted in the register, mainly for easy identification and retrieval. Storeroom layout. It is a proper placement of materials and storeroom equipment. It may be broadly including the departmentalizing of the stores, placing of the shelves and other equipments appropriate manner, and proper placement of the materials with the sufficient space for material handling and labor movement will also be included in the layout of a storeroom. An efficient layout of the stores should serve the following objectives. This efficient layout must result in the reduction in the investment of the shelves or the bins or the other equipments. It must reduce the operating expenses by minimizing the movement of the materials and the internal transportation cost. It should increase the flexibility of the movements. It should increase the safety of the workers engaged in transporting the materials, shipping the materials, easy accessibility and good housekeeping, the convenience of the traceability of the items, the suitability to the nature and the volume of the materials, and the maximum usage of the floor space. So this will give a broad outlook regarding the layout and the storeroom activities of a store section. Now we shall see the factors to be considered to have a good storeroom layout. The first main factor is the nature of the materials. Heavy and the bulky materials will demand a special attention in moving it and handling it, and this will call for a place nearby the user department or nearby the dispatch section to minimize the movement, and it can be placed on the ground floor for the easy handling. Small and light items can be easily moved and handled, and they may be placed away from the dispatch section, and it can be placed on the racks itself. The costly items might require the closed shelves, which may be kept under lock and key and should be placed where proper control can be exercised by the storekeeper and restrict the general entry by all. The fragile materials may be carefully stored. The materials which are inflammable are to be kept away from the general stores. Next is the volume of materials. The space requirements will depend upon the quantity and bulky nature of the materials. The storeroom should provide sufficient space on the ground and in the racks and the shelves for those materials to be stored at a particular point of time. The space requirement should also be considered by the storekeeper. The characteristics in handling the materials and the nature of the equipment involved in handling the materials should also be taken care of. Then the floor and the air space. While planning the layout of a store, the available floor space and the ceiling heights should be utilized to the maximum. So suppose if the ceiling is very high, you can go for the racks at a very high level. Suppose if you are going to have heavy items, the racks cannot be at a very high level. So considering the floor and the air space, the layouts can be planned. Then scope for the further expansion and flexibility. As the expansion needs further place or extra place, and the store layout should be flexible enough to provide for the further expansion, and it must have adequate space for the further expansion. So the scope for the further expansion should also be considered. Accessibility. The layout of the store should be taken into consideration when the accessibility of the store items should be made at a very convenient manner. There should be adequate equipment handling like trolleys, forklifts to have the accessibility of the items. Then the type of the storage equipment. The type of storage equipments will decide about the store's layout. That is the shape, the size of the pallets, the size of the other handling equipment will decide about the store's layout also, because we must have the place for moving the pallets and moving for the other skids and other things. Protection. The protection of the materials is considered to be the main objective of any storekeeping. So that loss due to the natural calamities or loss due to the theft must be properly minimized, and the store should be ensure the safety and security of all the materials. Then proper illumination and ventilation. The store should be properly illuminated and must have proper ventilation also. So these are all the main factors to have the layout of a storeroom, namely the nature of materials, volume of materials, then the air space and the floor space available, then scope for the future expansion, the accessibility of the items, then the type of the storage equipments and the protection given to the materials and the ventilation and illumination in the place. Various equipments are required in a storeroom. The main equipment required are mainly for storing, handling, measuring and for weighing. The selection of the equipment should be in such a way that it reduces the investment and the operating expenses and gives greater safety and utilizes the space available. So the material should be properly identified for correct accounting, avoiding the issue of wrong items to the workshop, then facilitating the sorting of materials before machining and for returning the cut pieces to the stores after machining. So this material identification is said to be the major factor to be considered by the storekeeper. So this identification can be made by tagging the materials, giving a cloth top tag to the materials. You have to tie a small cloth tag to the material, and this is a common practice mainly to identify the material. Otherwise, you can go in for labeling the containers or painting the containers or writing it on the containers or the drums or the boxes, then embossing in case of castings and forgings, The part number or other details of manufacture or the batch number will be embossed on the item itself. So the location of the identification of the mark on the costing is said to be important because it can be it can be removed at the time of machining also. Where to locate that embossing has to be decided. Then stamping, it must be properly stamped, and again color coding can be given, and batching may be made and it must be entered in the register, item itself. Coming to the issue section. The issue section handles the issue of materials to the user departments. The term issue means supply of materials from the stores to the production departments. This issue may be divided into two main activities: items issued for consumption and the items issued on loan. Items that are issued for the direct use in the departments. Raw materials, parts and components are issued to the workshop or to the production spot from the stores for the direct consumption, and this is issued on the receipt of material requisition slip. A material requisition slip, as we saw it earlier, it is a written document or a written authority for the stores to issue the materials to any person or section in an organization entitled to draw materials from the stores. So the responsibility is fixed now. The requisition slip should have columns for the class and code numbers, description, quantity required, quantity issued, date of issue, work order number, requisition number, signature of the authorizing persons, signature of the issuing officer, then signature of the receiving officer. All these requisitions must be recorded daily in bin cards and the stock control records. In order to prevent any malpractice or pilferage, the authority for signing the requisitions should be delegated to a few selected persons only, or with a proven integrity. For exercising proper control over the issues and consumption of materials, it is necessary that the requisition slip should be properly scrutinized before the issue. Next comes the stores accounting section. Proper stores accounting is necessary to exercise physical and financial controls over the stores. All the incoming materials should be first recorded in the goods receipt book or goods inward book on a daily basis. This is prepared in triplicate. A copy is sent to the accounts department and one to the stores department along with the goods by the receipt section. On the basis of this slip, stores ledger is maintained having as many accounts as the number of items issued. Each account shows the columns of dates of receipts and issues, the amount and the quantity of the receipts, the name of the departments to whom it has been issued, then the balance in terms of quantity and amount. Besides this, each account has an introductory reference as to the name of the article, the code of the article, the bin number, identification mark, etc. On the basis of the material requisition slips, issue register is maintained showing accounts or departments or the production number to indicate the consumption in each department or in each production unit. Bin cards are maintained and are hanged on each bin, showing the amount of the materials received, issued and the balance available on every transaction. This is a copy of the account maintained in the stores ledger. So in stores ledger, we will have the quantity and the value. In case of bin card, we will have only the quantity. So in both the records, we will have the receipt, issue and the balance of the materials. Then we will come to the stock taking. Physical verification of the stock after each month or a quarter or a year should be taken to verify the balance of the quantity shown in the bin cards and the stores ledger. Physical verification should be carefully undertaken by an officer who is not related with the store. because personal bias should not be there in verifying the stock. The balance should be tallied with those in the accounts, and the discrepancies, whether it is an excess or a shortage, should be noted, and the reasons should be ascertained from the responsible persons. Then inventory valuation. Inventory valuation must be done at the end of the financial year, and it is necessary to estimate the value of the closing stock to be included in the annual accounts. Thus, the internal organization and working of the stores includes the receiving section, the store section, the issue section, accounting section, and the inventory valuation. Now we shall see the interrelationship between the stores and the other departments. Though the stores department is going to serve all the departments in the organization, the interaction is always between the purchase department and the production departments. We shall now see how this stores department is interrelated with the other departments. Stores and purchase. The two functions of materials management, namely the stores and purchase, are complementary to each other. Apart from the close relationship that exists on a day-to-day basis in the purchase of various items of stores, there are some other important activities which can be done best by the close cooperation between the stores and the purchase. They are the identification, that is the coding of the stores, and the store's vocabulary, that is the code itself, the standardization, the variety reduction, inventory control, the value analysis, salvaging operations, etc. These activities will also include the store's forward intents to purchase departments based on inventory levels determined in accordance with the usage and delivery lead times. Determination of lot sizes for purchase which should suit the production requirements, transport, handling, and storage space. The purchase department informs the stores regarding the orders placed, and the stores department informs the purchase department regarding the receipts, rejections, shortages, breakages, theft, and the loss. The stores department also informs the purchase departments of changing production trends, slow and non-moving stocks, obsolete stocks, the scrap, and the surplus. So this is the relationship between the purchase department and the stores department. Now the stores and the production. The production department is usually the chief customer of the stores. If the stores are represented at the production meetings, the coordination can be excellent. Any change in the production schedule needs to be communicated to the stores to enable have a prompt, appropriate action at their end. Then stores and the sales department. In a marketing organization, sales is the chief customer of the finished goods store. The sales department may wish to ensure the availability of the stocks at all the times, and this may cost clearly in terms of inventory building. So close cooperation and an integrated approach can aid the management to increase the profitability of a concern. The stores and the accounts. The accounts department does all the stores accounting activities with their daily actions. Stores and personnel. Selection of a right person for the store's work and imparting training in storage, preservation, and accounting techniques are said to be more important. So the purchase and stores department will have a relationship with the purchase department, production department, sales department, accounts department, and the human resources department. Thus, storage activity is said to be a vital activity for the smooth functioning of an organization. This is an interrelated activity with all the departments.